You are
Okay.
very welcome back to our bookmakers.com World Cup coverage in association with Cobra Bet. I'm Tom Lee, and my guest, once again, well, it was a treat to have him last week. Even better to have him back, Brad Friedel. Brad, welcome back. What an opening couple of days it has been.
Just truly remarkable. From England's tantalizing performance, scoring six in a World Cup, they must be buzzing. The first half of the US was, they were really good, and then it really tailed off in the second half for the US. This morning, Argentina losing. I mean, how about who would have thought that could happen against Saudi Arabia? So yeah, just truly remarkable.
All of which tells me we've got loads of ground to cover. Not too much time to do it, but we'll get there. So let's take the handbrake off and jump straight in. The first thing I want to tackle you on, and I'd hope not to begin like this, Brad, because it doesn't matter what league, what continent, what competition, top of the agenda, the bizarre application of VAR. And you can give me a dozen examples. I'll give you three as a teaser. Enner Valencia's opener ruled out in the Qatar Ecuador game on Sunday. Harry Maguire wrestled to the ground, no penalty. Roy Keane's opinion on British television about what could be a glut of penalties if you see the way the rules were applied in that famous Argentina-Saudi game. What have you made of VAR and its application?
Okay, so the Valencia one, I believe when it was explained to me again, that was the correct decision, I believe. But I mean, if there wasn't VAR, I don't think anyone would ever complain about it. With regards to the tackle on Harry Maguire, and then to give a penalty against England for something far less, there was a little shirt tug later on in the game. That one to me was absolutely bizarre. I mean, how you could have, okay, I can understand how a referee might not see it in the run of play if he has bodies in front of him, but you also have two linesmen, a fourth official, and then what is it now with VAR? Four other individuals sitting in a truck watching it. Yes. And if you can't see the arms wrapped around the player, taking him to the ground, and then you shouldn't be there. That's number one. Number two is you would have told the referee in the center, you need to go look at this. He tackled him to the ground. But then surely later on in the game, if that's how you're going to referee the game, then referee the game in that manner. But then surely at the end of the match, when there's a little slight tug on the shirt, then you wouldn't call that a penalty. Because I mean, one offense, they're both probably penalties to the letter of the law. However, to give one and not the other, and the one that you didn't give was far more of a stonewall penalty than the latter. So yeah, bizarre, really bizarre to me.
Well, Brad, you speak as a man who played in a golden era when it really was a man's game in the Premier League, where rough and tumble and some pretty full-blooded challenges went in. And yet in this tournament, despite the controversy about the VAR, it would appear that they are determined to let things run, and tackles really are allowed. We've seen plenty of pretty full-blooded challenges, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, and I don't mind that as long as you're not going out to injure an opponent. You know, I think that that was in the game in the 80s and 90s, especially. You know, where you would get, especially over in the Premier League, where you would get those games where some challenges had intent to injure. I have no problem with the hard tackles at all, and I actually welcome referees to allow it to go on. The trick with that, though, is then as the game goes on into the latter stages, you can't then start giving bookings for everything where you didn't all game. And a problem that these referees are going to find themselves in if they book someone early on because they want to set the tone, but then both teams want to play physical, then you could get into a situation where you're handing out 11 or 12 bookings, and you don't want that either. So I'm all for the officials to allow the game to be physical. However, the better referees will communicate with the players throughout the game, and those are the best referees out there. So if they can have some sort of a rapport, especially with the captains, that'll go a long way to having really well officiated matches.
And not just rapport, but protocol, particularly for a goalkeeper, a specialist position. We saw in England's opening fixture against Iran, a goalkeeper who seemingly from a distance was not fit to continue. And yet the protocol seemed to go out the window. He was continuing, then he wasn't, then he was substituted. What a melee that was. As a goalkeeper yourself of great pedigree, great vintage, what on earth did you make of that?
Well, okay, I feel a little, I feel a little bit for the whole situation, because if it's an outfield player, they can go off the pitch and you can really have a good assessment. A goalkeeper, you can't really do that. If you bring another goalkeeper on the pitch, then that's it. And that was a big part of their team, that goalkeeper that went off. So I feel a little bit. So like, was it a broken nose? Was it also his jaw? Did he get concussed? It's difficult to tell straight away what went on. And because it was the goalkeeping position, I feel a little bit for the actual protocol, because they would want to get, it's a World Cup, it's first game of the World Cup. It's the opening, what was it, 5 minutes, I believe, 5-6 minutes of the game. So you're going to want to give that team the allotted amount of time, or at least maybe even a little bit more, to see if the goalkeeper could carry on. Not an ideal situation, and it was a great ball across the box. It was a real unfortunate situation. You saw the Iranian defender wasn't even looking at the goalkeeper when they smashed heads. So I think that is down to more of an unfortunate incident than the referee getting it wrong on protocol. But I will say, if it did have to do with concussion, then the player shouldn't have been allowed to carry on. If it was from a broken nose, then that's more of a degree of if the player can deal with the pain.
But as you just said there, the referee did get it wrong. It was a shambles, wasn't it, for a minute? Because you think, well, this guy looks physically unwell. He didn't look as if he knew which parish he was in. And yet all of a sudden it was, oh, nothing to see here, fellas. On we go, continue. 2 minutes later, no, red flag. This fella's got to leave the pitch. He's not well.
But I think you have to rely on the medical staff as well. And there should be FIFA medical intervention when it comes to concussion protocol. Again, if it's a cut on the eye, or if it's a cut on the face and you're just dealing with blood and some blood on the shirt, you have to make sure that everything's patched up. You have to have someone there that dictates, is this concussion or is this not a concussion? Or is it a possible concussion? If it is, then you need to get the player off the field. If you're dealing with a cut and blood, and you have to have medical staff there to be able to guide you, because these referees are not medical professionals generally.
Brad, switching tack very slightly from protocols to protests. The pre-match build-up prior to England and Wales, England against Iran, Wales against your nation, the USA. Of course, all this chatter about would they, wouldn't they, and ultimately they didn't, where the rainbow armbands, which many commentators would have suggested would have been a brilliant moment to make that gesture. Was that a pity, or was that the right decision?
Tough for me to answer from here. I think we're putting too much pressure on players and staff and FAs with regards to all the political issues surrounding the World Cup. I really think that these questions and the pressure should be aimed at FIFA. FIFA is the one that is the governing body that allowed for the games to be played here. I think the players and staff, they want to do as much as possible. But with regards to when the decisions are made and why they're made, that's going to be a federation to federation decision. The only thing I would add to this is players, almost down to, and every one of them that I've ever played with, are all for doing everything that they can to raise awareness for certain scenarios around the world and the globe, and really want people just to be kind to people. That I will say. So if something's presented to a player, generally speaking, again, will you do this? And it's okay by the FA and it's okay by everyone to do, they do it. So I think at this stage, most players now just want to play football.
I think that moving swiftly on, and this one, Brad, is partly tongue-in-cheek, but partly serious. If players just want to play football, fans just want to watch the match while drinking a cold beer. And outside of FIFA's control, was this diktat late in the day that there would be no alcoholic beer in the stadiums. And given one of the notable sponsors is a well-known American company, how does your average American fan feel when they make the pilgrimage to support their great nation out in Qatar, only to be told the refreshment taps have been turned off? That was a bit of a kicker for supporters just a few hours before it began.
To my knowledge, there are areas that you can have a beverage. To my knowledge, an agreement was also put in place with the company. I don't really know what else to tell you. Again, you got to go ask FIFA because they're the ones that put the World Cup there. They're the ones that had all the agreements in place. I don't think, from an American standpoint, that they would have cared going into the stadium watching their team that they were able to drink or not drink. That's not the be all end all of the American culture. And I think once they had their ticket, they would be really happy to go in and support their team. If they wanted to have a drink somewhere, I think they would have found the areas around that they are able to do so. I think this question should firmly go to FIFA and Budweiser together as one. Then I think you get a really interesting answer from that.
Well, harness that Stars and Stripes energy, because a story caught my attention in the build-up to the Wales-USA game. Apparently, no less a figure than the US President, Joe Biden, got in touch with the players, made a call, said, we have some of the best players in the world on this team. Go get them, do your stuff, try and get as far, as deep into the tournament as they possibly can. That must have been some thrill, some honor, some moment for that group of players to hear from the president himself. What I want to ask you, Brad, is, was there ever an occasion, and I speak to somebody who has the elite privilege of having been to not one, not two, but 3 World Cups. Did you ever find, say, I'm trying to think who it would have been in the relevant period, but maybe George Bush, maybe Barack Obama, did one of these guys come sliding into your DMs saying, Brad, I need a word. Come on, we can do this?
Not a DM, but it was Bill Clinton. We met. We went to the White House. We also had phone calls. George Bush Jr. as well. When he was in office, he made a phone call when we were in Korea, Japan. I think it's each time the World Cup comes around, the president in the White House gets involved with things, and it's the first time it happens, it's a bit surreal because most of us would never ever have come across a president before. And I remember
how could you? How would you? That's amazing.
Oh, correct. And then in the 2000 Olympics, we were actually watching a game, and it was Chelsea Clinton, who was a soccer supporter. She watched the game with us when we were watching in the stands. I don't know if Bill or Hillary Clinton were there at the time, but I know Chelsea Clinton sat with us and watched the game. It's remarkable, and by all accounts, with the players who currently play in a lot of sports, when Barack Obama was the president, because he's sports crazy, especially basketball. And apparently he was really good company with all the sports teams, wishing them luck and getting involved and gaining knowledge of all the sports, especially soccer. So a bit of a surreal experience when it occurs.
Speaking as a Brit, that the only relevant sort of qualification I can give to that is to say that must be the equivalent of, as was meeting the Queen, now meeting the King. So you've got the pressure and the weight and the expectation of delivering and having perfect preparation, peak physical fitness, and great tactical knowledge going into a World Cup. And then you've got the dilemma of, what on earth do you say to Bill Clinton when he's wishing you good luck? Can you remember that conversation? How did it go, Brad?
I mean, there was two different sides to him. One when the cameras were there, and then one when the cameras went. He was very very funny. He was very easy to talk to. I don't remember the conversation. It was very short with regards to like personal interaction, because we were there with the team. But when the cameras weren't there, he was very charismatic, a very likable figure. I came out of meeting him with a very positive outlook on him as an individual. It's a side of a president that you would never ever get to see unless you're there. And you know, I've heard through the grapevine of some people that I've known when they met Barack Obama, he was the same. They said he was just a magnificent individual to meet.
Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. That is gold. That's genuinely amazing, because the sheer notion that that group of players got to have a few words with Joe Biden, and the very fact that you've done the same and been there and had that emotion, that experience, is superb. Thank you, Brad. Reflect, if you will, briefly, not on a presidential encounter, but on an opening World Cup encounter, two of them, England against Iran. Your brief reflections on Gareth Southgate's team as they obviously took to the pitch and delivered the goods against what looked like the weakest opponent in the group. But nonetheless, you can only beat what's put in front of you, and beat them they did comprehensively.
They might be the weakest team, or what looks like it, in the group, but they're not a bad side. The England just made them look really poor on the day. England were awesome. They really were. The goal number 2 against England was interesting. It was a dubious penalty in the latter stages of the game. I mean, England scored 6, could have scored 4, 5, 6 more. I thought Saka was outstanding. I thought one of my favorite players came off the bench, that's Foden. I think he's just a remarkable player. Harry Kane, of course. He and Callum Wilson as the 9s were more providers on the day. That's how many bodies they got forward and how quickly they attacked, and the spaces that they were able to expose, especially on that right-hand side. But the man of the match for me was 19-year-old Bellingham for a World Cup performance. He was remarkable. It's going to be a difficult test for the United States, whether we're at full strength or missing a couple bodies or whatever. It's going to be hard, because all the wondering around, is Gareth Southgate the right guy? Has he been there too long? Will the players play for him? They didn't do very well in the Nations League, et cetera, et cetera. I'll tell you what, throw all that away, because they look good.
They do look good, and of course they're going to come up against a US team who started extremely strongly against Wales. Some cynics on this side of the Atlantic were playfully saying USA won, Gareth Bale won. But I think that's probably a bit unfair, because it was a real good rearguard action from Wales to firm things up and then find some attacking zest and level that game up. I thought the second half, particularly, Brad, was a very good watch. What did you make of the US opener in turn?
I was really pleased and not worried in the slightest after the first half. I thought Musa, Tyler Adams, and Weston McKennie in the middle of the field were awesome. I thought they were controlling the entire tempo of the game. And the last name that I mentioned to you, this is a big issue for us, the U.S. team, is Weston McKennie. He hasn't been fit with Juventus, and he's missed a lot of football. And I know that's why he was taken off early. We are a completely different team when Weston McKennie isn't playing. He's our wheelhouse. He's the box-to-box guy. He can actually play as a 6'8" or a 10 in the midfield, and he's our most important player. When he came off, our level dropped a bit, and I understand why he was taken off, because he didn't want to risk injury for the latter stages, hopefully in the tournament. But Wales got it together at halftime, and they actually, when you look at it, how lopsided it was in the first half, Wales ended up having the better of the opportunities in the game. There was a corner that came in, is virtually an open goal that was missed. There was a save Turner had to make from Ben Davies. He headed it right at him, but it was a really good opportunity. There was another strike from an angle that Matt Turner had to save, and there's one where Turner came off his line, and if Kellen Acosta wasn't alert to fail bail, Turner was off his line, and that could have gone in. So
let me tackle you on a specific point. I love that you have just pinpointed Kellen Acosta's foul on Gareth Bale in the very, very late knockings of the game. Wales were, if not on top, at least throwing a few punches against an opponent who'd put in a massive physical shift. Bale had the opportunity, and where Gareth Bale is concerned, you know the one I mean, the ball was loose in the centre circle. Turner was off his line. Bale, I think, was sizing up the chip, and yet Kellyn Acosta stepped in with, on the left-hand side, you could say, if you were Welsh, you'd say it was a ruthless piece of cheating and arguably a red card challenge. If you're holding an American tint on this, you might say it was an elite piece of professionalism and one of the best fouls you could ever make for your team. You take the card, you walk away, a job well done. Which one was it?
It was a professional play, without doubt. And if I was watching a neutral game, I would say the same thing. Gareth Bale has the skill and the class to score from there. And Matt Turner was off his line. If Kellyn Acosta doesn't make the tackle, there's a very good percentage chance that Wales win the game 2-1. So it was a much needed challenge. Now, if Kellyn went in to injure Gareth, then I think that wouldn't have been the way to go about it. But he didn't go in to injure Gareth. I mean, they're teammates as well, but he didn't go in to injure him. He went in to stop him from scoring a goal. That is not a form of cheating. And I'm not saying that because I'm American. I'm saying that I would say that on any neutral game that I would watch.
Famously, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in 1998 felled the great late Gary Speed at Old Trafford and got a rousing round of applause from the entire stadium, who stood up and applauded him as Uriah Rennie, the referee, dismissed him with a straight red. So always these issues will divide people, but we hear you, Brad. Moving on, this tees up beautifully. Friday, second game in Group B, England against the USA. What a game this could be. Win for England and they go through to the knockout. Lose for the USA, and all of a sudden things are looking potentially quite precarious. It's delicately balanced. What type of a game, and indeed what type of a result, do you anticipate, Brad?
I'm not worried about this game mentally for the US at all. We're generally pretty good when we're the underdogs. We're generally pretty good when we play the better nations. Not saying that we always win, but we get really good performances. We struggle a little bit more when we're expected to win, when we're expected to boss the game. I think you saw how well we played in the first half. We had a real difficult time seeing the game out and bossing the game from that point against Wales. The England team, I think, are going to attack, and they're going to attack quickly. They're going to try to make sure that our fullbacks stay back as far as possible, and they're going to try to make sure that they win that midfield against Musa, McKennie, and Adams if they can. What I would like to see the US do is when Shaw comes forward, if he in fact starts on the left and Trippier in the right, or Walker or Trent or whoever's playing there, when they go forward, I'd like to see us try to get into the spaces that they leave to try to make England defend as much as possible. Easier said than done. And I think England is coming into this game full of confidence. And I think we're pretty much coming into this game feeling like we've lost because we were in such control of a game and we didn't get the 3 points out of it. We're going to feel like we dropped 2 points. So I think we're going to give a lot of fight. I think we're going to give a lot of resolve. And against this England team, I just think the US is going to come up a little short. It's going to be hard. I do not think it's going to be a one-way traffic at all. But with the way things are in the balance, I really do feel that England have the upper hand here. And I would say something like a 2 or a 3-1 to England at this stage.
Yeah, I suspect our sponsors, Cobra Bet, wouldn't lay you huge prices about those kind of correct scores. Brad, can I just say, if we're talking about a tight game, one which England might shade, if there's a potential weak link, and I ask you this very deliberately as a very popular, well-known and successful and massively accomplished man between the posts, if there's a weak link, is it, and I'll give you the reasons behind my question, and I'm not just picking on him, but is it Pickford, Jordan Pickford? Because what he undoubtedly is as a character is very emotional. He comes out, he pulls at his defenders. He's not just communicative, but he's angry, he's gesticulating. Gareth Southgate is very loyal to his players. We've seen that with Maguire. We're seeing it with Pickford. Even if he makes a mistake, And I'd like to know if you think he should have saved Iran's first goal. Some people suggest he should, but he's a very loud, very boisterous figure. Does that give his defenders confidence, or does that create unrest? And therefore, is he a weak link?
Not a weak link. I think they have three goalkeepers on the books that can play, Pope and Ramsdale and him. I thought he made a wonderful save as well in the game. Are people not talking about that, where he tipped it either onto the bar or just, yeah, I think he got a hand on it. That was a very, very good save. I'm not nothing he could do on the penalty really. And the other goal, I think it's very harsh to criticize that he should have saved it. One thing I would say is it's more difficult as a goalkeeper to play in a game where you have hardly anything to do than one when the ball's in front of you all the time. I think against the US, he'll have far more to do because we'll attack. And even if it's on the counter, I don't know who Greg Berhalter is going to start, but if it's Giovanni Reina, if it's Weah, if it's Pulisic, if it's Sargent, if it's McKennie breaking out of the midfield, we will make whatever goalkeeper plays for England, and I assume it's going to be Pickford, we'll make him make some saves. So I feel he'll be a little bit more comfortable with the ball in front of him a little bit more. People might find that a bit strange to say, but when you just stand there for virtually 80 minutes and then you're called upon, it's not the easiest thing to do. You really have to stay concentrated. But weakness, no.
Who are the very specific goal threats? If Pickford is going to concede on Friday against the US, who are the likeliest candidates to make that breakthrough for America?
Whoever starts between Aronson has a goal in him. Giovanni Reina has a goal in him. Timothy Weah has a goal in him. Christian Pulisic has a goal in him. Weston McKennie has a goal in him. And if Ferreira gets the call, he's got a goal in him. So I mean, that's one of our strengths, to be honest with you. Whether we're especially if we're in a counter-attacking system, which I assume we're going to be at times, because England will have possession of the ball. The player that I would like to see remain on the bench for England is Foden, because I feel if we're compact in midfield, it just doesn't bother that guy. The way Pep Guardiola has nurtured him into playing football, he never panics on the ball. And if we have midfielders tightly together trying to limit England's possession-based football, if Foden plays, it just doesn't matter. He takes the ball in any circumstance, and he doesn't seem to get phased. So, but those are the guys that have a goal in them for myself. And if Pickford's going to be facing some shots, it'll be from that group that I just mentioned.
Brad, you mentioned to us in the piece you and I did last week, it was like you're a fortune teller because you gave us names to look out for in the tournament. You mentioned very specifically and very, very prominently Bukayo Saka, who immediately gets 2 goals in England's first game. You mentioned the great George Weah's son, Timothy Weah, who pops up with a really crisp right foot finish from a tricky position when through on goal to beat Wayne Hennessy and put the USA 1-0 up in their opening game. Is there anybody else you didn't mention there who in the early phase of the tournament has caught your eye? I'm thinking specifically the likes of potentially maybe the Dutch player Cody Gakpo, who plays for Ajax, who was so good against Senegal. Anybody else make it onto your list?
Well, Gakpo definitely makes it onto the list. He's been doing so well at the club level. Wasn't sure what he would do at the international level, and he played very well against Senegal. Through, I think, Moises Caicedo for Ecuador. We all know he's a good player, but he may, with Senegal not getting 3 points in the first game, we might end up seeing Ecuador in the latter stages. And I think he's a player that could really come to the forefront on bossing games in that midfield for Ecuador. He's a very talented player. That's going to be an enormous game when Ecuador comes up against Senegal.
Speaking of bossing games, that's exactly what Argentina, second favourites for tournament, didn't do. An astonishing shock. There always seems to be one in the opening round of matches. I remember Senegal shocking the holders France in 2002, but there's always one in every tournament, Brad. Argentina embarrassed, humiliated a country that has a volcanic love of football. The ramifications of that back in South America will be massive. And yet, can the Albi Celeste, can Argentina, can Lionel Scaloni, can Lionel Messi, can they save their tournament? Or are things looking rocky for the Argentines?
Well, I thought Argentina is one of the favorites. I actually had them down winning it. I still think that they can win it. And they have the quality to be able to claw themselves out of this position. I actually had them finishing second in the group. I thought they would start slow, but not losing to Saudi Arabia. I thought that they would. I thought that they would beat Saudi Arabia, and then maybe a couple of draws, and Poland would finish first, and Mexico would miss out because Mexico has not had a very good run up. They're missing Corona. Raul Jimenez has a little bit of an injury. They're a little bit unsettled in camp. So I had Argentina 2 and Poland coming out of that group as 1. I did not see them stuttering against Saudi Arabia. So now we're going to see in the next game the best Argentina that they have. They have to, because now they need 6 points out of the next 2 games. The thing is, they do have the quality to do it, and we could see them in the knockout stages. And this could be something in the tournament that galvanizes them. They've had their shock, and now the real Argentina is going to turn up. And we'll have to wait in a few days' time. But I did not, like the entire football world, I did not see this coming. And when goal number 1 went in, we thought, okay, formality. And then when goal number 2 went in, I know it was disallowed. If that goal stood, then we're probably sitting here at a 3 or a 4-0 game. And even though they may not have mentally been at their best, they would have come out with the 3 points, because the goals changed the attitude of players a lot. So, but yes, it's a stunning result, absolutely stunning.
Brad, just one of the many reasons it's a treat to get to talk to you on this bookmakers.com preview in association with our sponsors Cobra Bet is the fact that you've been there, you've done it, you're part of that elite select band, 3 major tournaments. You know the mood. If you can, just put your mind forward, but also back. Project us into the dressing room on Friday. Once the players have been out and warmed up, they've drunk in a bit of the atmosphere in the stadium. We know that they've had this contact from the man himself, Joe Biden, no less. The US president has been on the line wishing them luck. They've got 1 point in the bag. You say that the mentality will have been that they feel like they've had a defeat. They know they face a very much in-form opponent, England, with those 6 goals in their opener. But as an American, and specifically an American starting player, prior to that game, take us into the mind of somebody in the dressing room, say 20 minutes before. Summing it up, what are the sights, the smells, the sounds, the noises, the atmosphere? Is it tense? Is it jovial? Is it relaxed? Is it focused? If you can, summon up the picture that will be in the minds of those guys as they sit there 20 minutes, 15 minutes before that huge game, that enormous encounter on Friday.
I think the word you said, by that time when you're 15, 20 minutes out, it's focus. I'd say up till then, training was always pretty intense, and then the day before was lighter, but still intently focused on your set pieces and the job at hand and tactically what you're going to do. But then pretty calm. The coaches that I had wanted to make sure the players were relaxed on the way to the stadium. You go out for warm-ups and you're still pretty relaxed. And then once you get done with warm-ups and you go back into the changing room, then at a World Cup, I'd say that you're like ultra focused. It's more than a club match. It's a different feel to it, and you walk out a little bit earlier than you would for a club match, and the national anthems are being played. And the only time, I wouldn't call it nerves, more adrenaline, nervous energy, adrenaline that I ever had was when you have your full kit on now. You're carrying your gloves, or you have your gloves on, depending if you have a jacket on. That's what I did. And you're going out, and when you're standing in the tunnel because you just want to get out there. Once the whistle blows, then all the nerves go away and you play football. And you forget that there billions are watching on TV. You forget about the tens of thousands in the stadium. You really just focus on your players and the game. And it's quite, not quite, it's very enjoyable because you're playing in a World Cup. But you just focus from that point on. The nerves are really when you're standing in the tunnel. And when you look next to you and you see some of the stars you're playing against and some of your teammates, depending on what country you're playing against, some of your old friends that you play against, and just colleagues that you play with and against, you just all this nervous energy and adrenaline gets to you, but you're still focused. Say once you get out there and once that whistle blows, all that always went away for me, and it's almost as if you're playing with nobody sitting in the stands. And you can hear them, but you're focused on the ball and the players and what you want to do.
Brad Friedel, can I tell you, as a football lover, it is nothing but a privilege and a delight to hear an answer like that, transporting us actually into the mind's eye of somebody who gets the sheer luck, good fortune, but also obviously to have the athletic ability and skill to be able to experience that once. But you with your 82 caps and 3 tournaments, one can only imagine. This has been brilliant. Once again, our bookmakers.com World Cup previews in association with Cobra Bet before all the big games. And we'll be talking to Brad again next week after, and we'll be digesting the USA against England. And of course, looking forward to the USA against Iran. What a big game that could be with a view to who goes through to the knockout stage. Brad, thank you. Best of luck on Friday. Final word. You said it'd be close. You said England might just about shade it. If I had to pin you down, absolutely, what would be the final score?
What I really want is a draw for the US. I have to go based on what I've seen, and I'll go 2-1 to England. Really hard fought game, but 2-1 England.
Well, whatever happens, enjoy, folks. It's going to be a thriller, as it has been so far in the World Cup. We will be back very soon. Thanks for watching.